Welcome back to Talk of the Town News. I was in Dunfermline asking the general public with regards to UK Labour and Keir Starmer's performance over the past 6 months. But lo and behold, coming walking around the corner was Dunfermline UK Labour MP Graeme Downie, and he stopped to give us his viewpoints on how Labour had done in the first 6 months. So without further ado, please enjoy the video, but the public reaction follows, obviously, Graeme's part of the interview. So I'm in the Dunfermline High Street today and I've been asking local opinion about how Labour have done so far. Obviously you are the local MP for Dunfermline. The public opinion hasn't been great so far, but would you like to say how you feel you've done yourself so far?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is we've cleaned up the Tory economic mess in the last 14 years. We've given a record budget settlement to the Scottish Government, an extra £5.2 billion. So the SNP here have now got the resources, they've got the powers to fix public services, to fix the NHS, to fix education, all the things that they're responsible for. They've run out of excuses.
Okay.
We've done a whole range of other things. We've corrected the injustice in the miners' pension scheme. We've given 200,000 of the poorest Scots a pay rise by changing the living wage, additional working conditions, and a whole range of other things that have already happening just in the first 7 months.
Okay.
We've got a lot more to do, absolutely, but we've made a good start.
And so do you think that's the SNP's problem then, that the people are not feeling it in their pockets, they're not feeling like there's been an improvement?
I think people are seeing that the NHS has still got long waiting lists. I think they're still seeing a shortage of GPs. I think they're still unhappy with how education's going. The 5-circle transport, the rail service that you see is poor. That's all devolved to the Scottish Parliament. That's things that they're responsible. As I say, the Labour government, what we're doing with Labour MPs is we're giving the Scottish Parliament the resources that it needs. They've got the powers they need. It's really time for the SNP to get down and make sure these things work better. They've been in power for 17 years.
Okay. Now, obviously, one of the big issues around here was obviously the pensioners. I think that was your first vote in Parliament. How do you justify that? How do you justify obviously taking the winter fuel allowance away for the pensioners?
Well, we've not taken it away from pensioners. It's a devolved benefit, which is the first thing to say. That's a benefit that's devolved to the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah.
The SNP handed back the power to Westminster.
Right.
What we've actually done is we've made sure that the poorest pensioners still get winter fuel payment.
Right.
We've spent millions of pounds on ad campaigns to raise the number of people on pension credit so that they get winter fuel payment across the UK, and not just winter fuel payment, other benefits that come with that as well. But we think that resources should be tackled most on those who need it, and that's what the UK Labour government has done. In Scotland it is a devolved benefit, and again it's back to they've got the resources. If that's how the Scottish Parliament wants to spend it to make that universal again, that's absolutely their right. That is the purpose of devolution.
No worries. And then what's your thoughts obviously on Grangemouth at the moment? Because obviously it was said that a vote for Labour would stop Grangemouth obviously closing. We've now found out that it's closing. What's your thoughts on that?
I think this is an area where we've seen actually really good relationships between the Scottish Government and the UK Labour Government, where they've set up Project Willow to look at future uses of Grangemouth to make sure we're supporting that vital part of Scotland's industrial base. We know that engineering skills are going to be a huge thing we need in the future. In Dunfermline we've got Babcock Engineering as well, obviously, that's the biggest employer in the area. Those are skills we need to make sure we've got, and that's why it's really good to see the governments working together to make sure that we do look after Grangemouth as well. So that Project Willow is meant to report, I think it's the end of March.
So we're going to see a transition into something else and potentially obviously save some of the jobs that were lost?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of potential at that site. We've seen campaigns around things like sustainable aviation fuel, where that's a potential use for that site. We'll want to make sure we keep those type of skills. We know we're going to need them, and I say it's really good to see the governments working together to try and make sure we try and do that.
And what about the sort of energy crisis, as we'll call it? Obviously there's a lot of people calling for Scottish oil to be drilled again. Obviously we're now losing the refinery, unfortunately, but how do you feel about obviously the carbon neutral stuff? Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think we've said really openly we're going to need oil and gas for decades to come, but what we need to make sure is that we're actually having a proper transition. So it's about energy security, so we need to invest in solar, we need to invest in nuclear, wind farm, we need all of these things as well as, and again it comes back to a lot to do with skills. A lot of those skills in the oil and gas sector we're going to need in energy in the future. It's about upgrading energy infrastructure to make sure that we've actually got a grid that's suitable for purpose, which it hasn't been after decades of underinvestment. So again, it's about building up that infrastructure and that resilience that the grid's going to need, and it's about encouraging all different types of power generation. It's not about one or the other, you need everything.
And when do you think people are going to start to see it in their pockets then? Because obviously energy bills are still going up. Even things like the council tax was supposed to be frozen and stuff like that, and that's now obviously going to be going up as well. I mean, when are people going to start to see the benefits, do you think?
Well, I mean, the council tax freeze was a SNP policy, and actually it's hugely regressive, because what it really has done is it's built on, again, 17 years of underfunding of local services, and it's why you see Fife Council and others, really seriously underfunded is because the SNP have frozen that funding over the years. That means you're not seeing that kind of money at local level.
Right, okay.
And it's ring fence for Scottish Government priorities, and it's not been decided at local level where it should be.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened with things like the council tax fees. I mean, 2007, the SNP said they were going to abolish council tax.
Yeah.
They were going to abolish it and scrap it and
yeah.
replace something else. They've failed to do that. So the responsibility for that lies squarely and utterly with the SNP at Holyrood.
Okay. And then obviously there is the opinion that obviously decisions that are made down in Westminster are affecting us. So although the SNP government does control it up here, the funding that we get back here is maybe not enough. Is that something you can elaborate on?
No, I mean, I say £5.2 billion extra funding for the Scottish Government over the next 2 years. That's a record funding settlement for devolution. That's only happened because we've got a UK Labour government delivering that kind of funding for Scotland. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a UK Labour government at Westminster.
And where's that money going specifically then? What sort of areas? Is it just
so
for everything
that's
for
handy,
them to use?
That's handy for the Scottish Government to spend in any way that they choose. And that's devolution. That's how it should work.
Yeah, yeah.
The Scottish Parliament should decide its priorities for Scotland.
Yeah.
They will sometimes differ from other parts of the UK. The role of UK Labour government is to stabilise the economy,
Yeah.
grow the UK economy the best we can, and that is how we make sure we deliver the funding for public services in Scotland and across the UK.
No worries. And the last question then, what are you focusing on next? What's your big thing that you're focusing on just now that's going to perhaps see benefits for people and perhaps the local community?
Yeah, so I mean, my focus has been about making sure we've got the kind of investment we need in skills and jobs. I've been doing an awful lot of work with the defence sector down at Rosyth. It's the largest employer in the area. There's huge potential down there for renewables as well. I've had some very positive meetings over the last couple of days actually, just with people in Dunfermline about how we make sure we're growing the tourism and heritage sector, how we're taking full advantage of that, making sure we've got the right infrastructure that we need around that, so we're attracting more visitors that are spending their money here, that are staying here, and all of that creates local jobs and local economic growth. And I think we've got to make sure that Dunfermline's an incredible city. Scotland's historic capital but newest city. It's got huge strengths that we need to make sure we're taking advantage of, and we're really delivering. It all comes down to how do we grow the economy in Dunfermline. That's how we'll make sure we've got what we need in this area.
No worries. So obviously we've got the Scottish elections next year. Do you think obviously a vote for Labour is going to see improvements and stuff around the local communities? I mean, you look at the town, it's a little bit tardy, it needs tidied up, the clock doesn't even work.
Yep.
Do you think that is going to be an improvement if they vote for the Scottish
I absolutely do. I
election
think Anas Sarwar as First Minister would be a huge benefit and boost for this area and for the rest of Scotland. We'd see a reversal in cuts to local government we've seen over years. We'd see more decisions taken on the ground. We'd see much more local democracy, and we'd see the priorities being what they should be, which is how do we deliver for local people rather than getting tied up in constitutional arguments and things like that. Because the focus should be how can we make health better, how can we make education better, how can we make transport better, how can we get funding properly into our communities, how can we grow the local economies. That's how we'll get success.
So I'm in Dunfermline High Street today and I'm just asking about the UK Labour government, Keir Starmer, obviously the first 6 months. How do you think it's went so far and what's your opinion?
Well, I must be honest with you, I'm a lifelong Labour supporter and I'm slightly disappointed because for obvious reasons they've started with the pensioners, farmers, inherited taxes. Every day has been a bit of bad news for them. I'd like to see them starting at the top. We just heard last week that Roman Abramovich supposedly owes hundreds of millions of taxation to the UK government, so they should be chasing him first. And leaving smaller, more vulnerable sections of the community for further down the food chain.
Yeah, but things that are important to you are obviously the freezing of the pensioners and WASPy and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. I never thought the WASPy women would get anything, although I personally am a WASPy woman. But even the post office people who were, and other sort of survivors of blood scandals, apparently they haven't been paid either. Really? So, which to me is more of a scandal. Because that is total miscarriages of justice with the post office people.
Course. And what do you think about Grangemouth? Obviously, they were said at the time a vote for Labour is going to save Grangemouth, and it's obviously going now.
Well, I'm actually disappointed in Scottish Labour have been completely just following the party line. They haven't been taking their own stance on it. I mean, any storage facility where we can become more fuel independent has to be a plus point. The way that fuel prices are going.
Do you think there needs to be a balance between obviously natural energy and obviously like drilling for oil and things like that? Do you still think we need to supplement that just now until we get better technology?
We're coming away from it. We have massive oil resources. The rest of the world are still buying cheap oil from Russia and still pumping away. China's building power stations and we are making ourselves poorer every day. There has to be a balance. You're right, balance.
And do you think that's why the energy prices are going up? Because we're just obviously not using our own resources and things?
We're not using our own resources, and energy companies are being allowed to make fantastic profits, so that doesn't balance for me at all.
Absolutely disgraceful. And one last question, obviously we've got Graeme Downie here who got elected into the UK Parliament and his first vote was to obviously vote to freeze the pensioners. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think Graeme Downie better start looking for a change of career because I think he's going to be a one-term MP at this range, and I think a lot of them are.
Yeah, and obviously we've got the Scottish elections coming up next year in May. Who are you going to vote for?
I feel sorry for the Labour leader, because on the 4th of July at the last election he could have looked forward to being the next new First Minister, and now I think he must be completely shattered and want to completely give up, because I would never vote SNP because I don't believe in that ideology at all.
Do you see room, obviously down south there's obviously this big movement for reform and things like that. Do you think that would come in Scotland?
Well, then I look at what Trump's done in his first 30 days, and if reform aligned with him, that's a total disaster. It's a protest vote, I get it, and I think they possibly will get in next, because the present two parties aren't paying attention to what people actually have concerns about, which is immigration, fuel prices, food prices.
I think people are finding it in their pockets obviously just now as well, and people have just had enough, I think.
That's where it counts, in your pocket.
Dane, I'm just asking about people's opinion on the UK Labour government. Obviously it's 6 months in now, Keir Starmer's performance. What do you think so far?
Difficult to summarise. I think there was probably a bit of hope when Labour were voted into power. I think Scotland were in a position where they thought putting in a left-wing government would be a positive thing for Scotland, but I think his decision making on maybe, I would say, global issues such as the Middle East has been highly questionable. I think Scottish people would be looking for a bit more leadership in that regard for the people of
just for Gaza.
I think people of Scotland have been let down by that in terms of what they would vote for, and obviously the people of Gaza have been let down as well. And I think just recently with the biggest thing obviously is Grangemouth. I just think people did take that maybe on face value that with the oil
MP would stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get the fact it's a private company, but I think when you're in elected to power, there's pressures you can put on an organisation. I just think it's another blow for Scotland. Really, I think. Actually today, just walking around the town, I actually get a sense of mood of like people feeling generally quite frustrated at how things are.
I think people are finding it in their pockets obviously as well and stuff. But in terms of like more local issues as well, then what do you think about obviously the freezing of the pensioners, the waspy women, the grooming gang stuff? Is that important to you as well?
I don't directly, it doesn't, but I mean I suppose the impact to the pension side of things is, you certainly feel for it. I think it's just politicians who promise one thing and it's sort of let down,
Of course.
But I suppose in local issues, I think potentially what will happen. I mean, obviously it's a long time since the referendum, but I just think there's maybe a growing sense of maybe we do need to go our own way. I just think that's starting to grow again.
So obviously we've got the Scottish elections next year, next May. Is that something you would vote for then, potentially SNP?
I would. I think the situation we find ourselves in is we just need to take ownership of things. I think we're better. There's more to what we've got at the moment. I just think the potential for this country. We'd see other small countries doing really, really well, and I think taking a lead on international issues. Ireland's not afraid to speak out about international issues, and they don't. I think we are we're chained to the political decision making of others, and it's not representative of how we want to live our lives, I think.
Of the UK Labour government and Keir Starmer, what's your thoughts so far in the first 6 months?
He's not been great so far, but I would rather have him than the SNP. I'd rather go back to a Labour government seat, because the SNP have done quite a lot. Not done quite a lot. Ferries and all the rest of it. So. Yeah,
it's quite aggrieved at that. So if there was to, obviously we've got the Scottish elections coming up next year, do you think you would vote for Labour again, or somebody different?
Probably.
Obviously we've got Graeme Downie here, one of these first...
I saw him up in Tesco's,
Did you? Right, okay. One of his first obviously votes was to freeze the pensioners. Is that something you agreed with?
No, well I am a pensioner. No.
No, I didn't agree with that.
No.
I'm so disappointed. We were all so looking forward to a new government coming in, and it let us down.
Bit of a disappointment,
Yes, that is true.
I'm in Dunfermline High Street today, and I'm just asking for public opinion on Keir Starmer, the UK Labour government in the first 6 months. What's your thoughts so far?
I don't think they've done very good whatsoever. I don't rate Keir Starmer because the fact is he's extremely right wing, and the fact is that constantly he has punished the poor. His government has punished the poor, and the fact is that there is, the things are getting worse for people. The only thing the Labour government had to do nationally was slightly make things better for people, the community, right? And they haven't whatsoever. So, no, I don't rate it. I don't think I don't think they're going to be in government in 4 years. I don't think in 2026 they're going to be anywhere near the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Were you a Labour supporter before?
No.
No?
Not for a long time. When Tony Blair, when Tony Blair came in, etc., I have not voted Tony
and it's got
Blair.
Worse since then, the war and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Aye, I don't. I personally don't agree with any of the stuff that Labour have done over the last. They're not even a Labour Party anymore. Having done politics at uni and things like that, they're no socialists. They haven't been socialists for a long time. So that's my personal opinion.
No worries. And how did you feel about the sort of local issues and things like obviously freezing the pensioners, the waspy women, the farmers?
I think the thing is, Labour made such a big thing of the waspy woman, right?
Yeah.
Just for example, and the fact is that as soon as they get into power, they ditched it. Yeah. So I don't agree with that. Grangemouth is just there, and they're just shutting it, right? So they're going to shut Grangemouth. So for me, Thatcher shut Ravenscraig, Starmer shut Grangemouth. So the last great industrial complex that's left of the old traditional industries is going to get shut. Yeah. So we're a country with oil who's not going to be able to refine their own oil.
Refine their own oil now.
So that's it.
No worries at all. So obviously, like you said, we've got the elections next May. If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer this, but have you got thoughts of who you would vote for next time?
I'm an SNP voter, etc. So SNP, second preference would be Green, etc. For me personally.
No worries. Would you just like to see us go on our own and try and do something better than what's sort of happening?
Personally, the fact is that, let's be honest here, Reform's going to do really well in England.
I asked that to another person, and they said they weren't sure.
I think Reform's going to do a lot better than we think. They may not get all the seats because polls doesn't predict seats, but that's frightening. Right. The fact is that my grandparents, great-grandparents, fought fascism, and we're just going to have it in the door again. So so that's the thing that worries me. As I said, once again, as somebody said, you have to make things better for people. Yep. People don't see the life getting better. They don't see the houses getting built. They don't see the jobs getting built. They don't see the health service improving, none of which is all happening. Yep. They move towards the right, which is not what I want, but that's what seems to happen.
And one last question. Obviously, we've got a local MP, Graeme Downie, who's obviously Labour. His first vote in Parliament was to freeze the pensioners. I mean, were you as disappointed as what a lot of people seem to be?
But I always think the fact is they say anything to get in, and when they get in, they ditched it. And I think, I just think that, I knew I was going to be disappointed in the fact that but I didn't think it would be this quick so rapidly. And the fact is that, they can argue all the stuff they want. The fact is that the Labour politicians in Scotland don't have any influence in what's happening nationally. Yep. And the fact is that you can see, recently all the stuff with the Chancellor and all that, right, we'll build everything there. Yep. We'll build it all down in London, right, I have no problem, I love London. Yep. But you get all this stuff, etc., and it's all down, it's not even in the north of England, it's all actually down in the south of England, and the fact is that there's nothing for here whatsoever. And for me that makes it long term worse. Things are going to get worse. And the other thing for me is the fact is that the population group we don't talk about is young people have totally been shafted, right? And the fact is, so how are they going to afford a house? How are they going to get in long-term employment? How are they going to be able to have the benefit of the labour that we had growing up, etc., working, producing stuff, etc. They're not going to have it.
Do you mean fast? Obviously, you've got your pulse on your finger on the pulse with the politics. Do you think that we're going into a recession? Do you think that's coming?
I'm not sure, actually. I always think sometimes recessions are kind of manufactured by the policies we do.
Too early to tell, maybe.
It's too early to tell, but the fact is that the indicators on the good when the Bank of England has cut the end, right? So the fact is that all this stuff they're doing, I don't think neoliberalism works, and neoliberalism has been a failure. As I said, the biggest failure being when Thatcher sold the council houses. We don't have houses anymore. But the fact is that there is, I just think there's people in the country, people in Dunfermline, need hope. You need something that's going to give you something where you turn around and feel, well, he's getting a bit better.
And we're doing good for the future and the kids and all that sort of stuff.
Because whatever happens, whatever position you are, these kids are only going to be able to afford the house. Yeah. They're not going to go in the housing market.
Yeah.
Labour's got a good chance of privatising the whole health service. How folk going to afford the insurance-based health service? Exactly. I mean, all that sort of thing worries me.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure of the recession, but I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up in recession.
Ian, I'm just asking about the performance of the UK Labour government and Keir Starmer over the past 6 months. What's your viewpoint so far?
I feel that they're more conservative than they've ever been before.
Right, okay. And did you vote for them at all
I
in
did
this
not.
election? No. Would you consider obviously voting for them the next time under
Not
the
at present.
performance? What are you particularly unhappy about? Is it the farmers, the pensioners, the WASPy women, Grangemouth?
All of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they appear to be following exactly what the Conservatives do, which is tax the poor and let the rich off.
A lot of people have said they just had to be a little bit better than what we already had.
Yes,
It
just a
doesn't
little
seem to
bit.
have been-
Yes, just a little bit better. Yeah.
Do you feel it's not been that so far?
No.
No worries at all. Is there any big issues at all that are sort of grabbing your attention, immigration, anything like that?
Not particularly. I
No
don't think
worries
we
at
have a problem, but what do we do?
And then for, obviously, we've got the May elections in 2026, and for the Scottish elections, do you mind if I ask, you don't have to answer this, but do you mind if I ask who you would vote for at this current point in time?
It's becoming more and more difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still SNP, but I'm
SNP,
losing
yeah.
heart with that as well.
Right, okay. Do you mind if I ask why?
Because they didn't push their agenda, because they completely failed to do everything that they promised.
Yeah. So is your vote up in there for next year then?
It is indeed.
So I'm in Dunfermline High Street today, and I'm just asking for local opinion on Keir Starmer and the UK Labour government. How do you think they've done so far?
Well, I mean, I've always voted Labour all my life.
Yeah.
But I was a bit disappointed with the taking away from the fuel.
Yeah. The winter fuel allowance.
When prices are going up so much now. But then I know that you have to suffer a bit for things to get better.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're still hopeful that it might get better?
Hopefully. It's like trying to turn a big barge, you know, when they're coming in. You know, it's very slowly.
Yeah.
Slowly, hopefully, we'll get there.
And,
but they only got 5 years.
Well, that's it. And what's the most important issue for yourself? Is it, local issues like Grangemouth? Is it like you say, the winter fuel allowance? What's the most important thing you would like to perhaps see improved?
Well, it's economic growth, you know, for your children, your grandchildren growing up in jobs for them. That's right, to get the economy growing.
To get the economy going again.
Housing.
No worries. So obviously we've got the Scottish elections next year in May. Do you think you'll continue to vote for Labour, or is the vote up in the air?
Yes.
You still vote for Labour, yeah?
Vote for Labour.
Yeah, no, even though you're disappointed?
No, my roots there, and I'll keep hoping, you know, that
keep hoping.
things will get better.
No.
I think it's been a really tough time for Keir Starmer. He has inherited 15 years of Conservative government.
Yeah.
He has inherited the legacy of what was done through COVID, and it's going to take a long time to stabilise the country, coupled with existential factors as those going on in Ukraine, Palestine, and others. It's going to be a challenge.
No worries. So, if you don't mind me asking, were you always a Labour voter, or have you sort of swung that way recently? Where do you come from?
I would say that historically, family's always been a Labour voter, but I would probably say I'm more of a Conservative voter now.
Right, okay. So, obviously we've got the Scottish elections coming up next year. Have you sort of had your vote swayed in any way at all?
Well, what I would say about the Scottish elections is that this country has had enough of an independence mandate. Enough of an independence mindset. Without really having a mandate. And I think there will be a wholesale change in the Scottish elections come the election time. I think you've just got to look at the state of the health service, you've got to look at the education system, you've got to look at the roads, and the ability for inward investment beyond what the governments are providing, I think, has been abysmal.
And what are the key issues for you then that will swing your vote one way or another? Is it sort of local issues as well? Is it Ukraine, Gaza?
No, it's all issues. I think at a local level it's really important that the people of Dunfermline and Fife more broadly can rely on their MPs to actually represent their interests on local issues. I mean, you look at the state of Dunfermline High Street right now, and it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic.
The town clock doesn't even work. Do you know what I mean?
We're standing under the town clock, and the town clock isn't even working.
I know.
So for public spend and the services that you're getting, there is a complete disconnect between what the local people would want, would expect, and frankly deserve.
Yeah.
And if you sort of look at it as at a macro level, based on what's happening in central government, I think central government are trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
Rachel Reeves is under impossible pressure to balance the books.
Yeah.
And then you come to the Scottish elections later this year. I sincerely hope that there is a course correction and an alignment, probably more with central government, so having a Labour Party majority perhaps, or certainly a move away from the nationalist position. So I never really understood the mandate for devolution when Donald Dewar was the Secretary of State for Scotland at the time.
Okay.
And I think Tony Blair more broadly has a lot to answer for in granting the fact that devolution. Now, you can then sort of roll that back and say that the Scottish office at the time probably was having its hands tied. But if you look at what Scotland has achieved on its own under a devolved parliament, you've got the what do you call it? The New Forth Bridge.
Yeah.
Over budget. Scottish Parliament over budget.
The ferries.
The ferries over budget. Just the state. The fact is, and without sort of getting personal, many of the MPs that are sitting in the Scottish Parliament, many of them are probably ideologists, and being an ideologist is one thing, but having had the ability to actually run a business, run a payroll, be responsible for profit and loss and stuff like that, they've never done it.
Career politicians.
Well, I wouldn't even say they're career politicians, because you've got folks that are coming straight out of university, never worked a day in their life.
Yeah.
And again, it's no slating or slant on them as individuals.
Yeah.
Falling into politics because you think you've got an ideology, you know the word I'm looking for, point of view, becomes almost impossible. The lack of experience, the lack of sort of the ability to get things done rather than peddling a single sort of policy agenda, frankly, it's disgraceful.
Yeah. So obviously, for the future then, what would you like to see change? What is the most important issue you would perhaps like to see? Is it a local issue, like we've said, Dunfermline? Is it something else that you're sort of focusing
inward
on?
investment.
Just inward investment.
Inward investment, and the fact that there needs to be economic regeneration in Central Fife.
Yeah. So as you could hear, the general public are not overly impressed by UK Labour and Keir Starmer's performance over the first 6 months. When you look at the wider opinion online, his approval rating is obviously through the floor. Graeme Downie has said that it's the devolved Scottish Parliament which are affecting this. He has said that the UK Labour government has given extra money to the Scottish devolved Parliament and they are just not spending it correctly. Is that how you feel out there? Please like, share and comment below so I can get the fullest picture possible. And as always, please like, share and subscribe.